Alright, welcome everybody. Let's get started with Mindhunter Season 1, Episode 2. It's pretty hilarious watching Holden in the early part of this episode. He's practically salivating over the idea of talking to Ed Kemper when Tench is debriefing the officers in Santa Cruz Police Department. Holden is in the back of the audience talking to another officer, and he's getting so excited about a possibility of interviewing this man. And then when they're at the bar talking about Kemper some more, you see Holden wide-eyed, and it's almost like he's getting aroused by talking about the whole thing. And then after they're in the hotel room and he's doing his hair, and it's just so interesting watching him.
Kemper doesn't interest you, or is beneath you somehow?
A little of both.
You think the tie's too much? What about the suits?
Anybody finds out you're a Fed, there'll be a riot.
He's a complete opposite to Tench and everyone else who thinks of these killers as disgusting and vile people, whereas he actually sees some value in possibly talking to them. So when Holden starts speaking to Kemper, we get the idea right off the bat that Kemper has a real distaste for women and a general distrust of them. That seems pretty obvious from his killings that he performed, but at the same time he talks about how he didn't like the name that his mom gave him and how she was generally kind of a nuisance, where on the other hand he seems to enjoy spending a lot of time with men and kind of chatting it up and having a good time with the boys. And so he's very opposed to the female kind and very sided with other males who he identifies with more. As the interview continues, we see how Holden is siding with Kemper and really trying to understand him, and he says things like, I just don't see how a guy like you could end up in prison or do the things that you did. And it's like he's actually seen him as a human being. He's not just seeing him for the crimes he committed, and maybe there's something else there. And that's really what empathy is about, and it's helping him to get this guy to open up and be honest about some of the gruesome acts that he committed. He's not conducting this interview through logic or some step-by-step process that's been laid out for him. He's for the most part just saying what's coming to his mind and responding to what Kemper is giving him, and it's leading to some strange, organic, natural conversation that's leading places that neither of them know where the conversation is going. At one point, Kemper says, "What do you want from me?" And Holden says, "I don't know." And it's like, how much more honest can you get in a conversation like that when you're talking to a serial killer? And this is it's just ridiculous how in tune with the moment he is. And then when Holden brings all this information back to Tench, Tench is highly skeptical of everything that he's telling him, and he has a refute for every positive comment that Holden provides. And we just see how Tench has been basically institutionalized, like a lot of other police officers and FBI agents, into thinking a particular way about the killers and how they operate, and just can't see outside of his small view. Holden asks Tench to visit the next weekend, and when Tench says no, he says, "You're just going to play golf." And it's like, yeah, he is. And he's going to continue just doing his own thing. And he's not interested in this work like Holden is. He's not about that life, basically. He's on the outside looking in. Then in his next interview with Kemper, Holden starts to put on the masculine persona. He's obviously not a more masculine man himself, but he knows that this is what's going to help open up the conversation more and side with Kemper, because he is so masculine dominated and so anti-woman, anti-feminine. He's telling the truth about his life, but in a disguised way, in a way that he would never talk in his actual life. It's almost like it's a type of therapy for Holden in a way. We're seeing one of the therapeutic techniques Holden is using in these interviews is motivational interviewing, and what that encompasses is a lot of active listening, a lot of reflection, a lot of empathy. He often restates Kemper's phrases and words in a slightly different way that makes it where he understands him. He's showing that he understands what he's talking about, but he's not repeating exactly what Kemper says. It's a great technique. And it's all fun and games for Ed Kemper until Mom comes up, and then we see the blank stare and no emotion and just a void.
So they learn strategies, they deploy their minds and their sex, and they intuitively learn to humiliate.
Did your mother humiliate you? Ed?
And we see how much this topic affects him and how there is so much there that is connected to the things he's done. Tench is so conditioned when he talks to Holden. He says,
"You're a federal agent. Don't give him anything. He's your subject. Be objective."
Just a bunch of commands. And these are the commands that he's probably been hearing his whole life, and he's just spewing them back to Holden. There's no thinking involved there. It's just automatic reflexes that he's going through, and he's trying to get Holden to be the same way. But Holden's resisting with good reason. After they go to interview the old lady who was attacked in one of the small towns that they were providing instruction to for the cops, they go back to a diner, and we hear Holden kind of list off a few possible characteristics of the guy who could have hurt her.
17, 18-year-old high school kid. Low self-esteem. Hates authority. Doesn't get along well with his parents.
We're starting to see profiling going on, and how can we create an idea of who this person might be, general characteristics that might fit in with the type of person that would commit this type of crime. They're essentially theorizing about who the perpetrator is, and then they end up having to follow up on that theory and hypothesis and do the science, which is the investigation. When we see Holden talk about the case and trying to create this profile, we see how his imagination is working, and he has a great one. His mind is just working at full force, creating this picture in his head, and it's a really great creative skill that is gonna help him so much in this work. And then when Tench goes with Holden to the interview with Ed Kemper, we see how Ed has changed, and because Tench is in there and he's like kind of the official FBI agent and he's very standoffish, Kemper just starts going into his routine conversations about why he did it and using psychoanalytic jargon to kind of please Tench, and probably what he used to please the psychiatrist when he was in the psychiatric hospital. But we're also seeing here how Holden is making rookie mistakes still at this point of his career. Although he was right on in his syncing up with Kemper in the earlier interview, he's missing that Kemper is trying to manipulate Tench at this point and is kind of just putting on a show, and Holden's kind of eating it all up and not realizing that this interview is much different than the one he had held earlier when they were just one-on-one. When Holden's back at his girlfriend's apartment, she starts talking to him about if he likes his mom or not, and how that's a question that her mom will ask him if he ever goes to meet her. And that's the test to see if he's going to be a good boyfriend or not.
So, do you like your mom?
I do. She's someone I really enjoy talking to.
I knew it. I knew you were a mama's boy.
And we're seeing more of this mom relationship stuff play out here. And, what she's really asking him there is, are you a submissive male? Are you somebody who is going to do what you're told and listen to commands? And that is kind of what Holden is in relation to females for the most part. He is not on the dominant side. He's not more masculine oriented. He's more submissive. But being more feminine oriented in terms of his energies is also what makes him excel at his job in terms of his therapeutic approach and his empathy, his understanding, a lot of qualities that more masculine oriented men don't have. And maybe that's why he did so well in this job and was able to do things that others weren't able to do. And then at the end of the episode, as they're heading down the elevator to the basement, we see the disparity between the two, in that this looks like an opportunity for Holden and something that will prove to be fruitful, whereas Tench stands there with his box with a Playboy magazine and a basketball hoop, more of that masculine energy I'm talking about, and he's just pissed and withdrawn, and he's like, this kind of sucks. And yeah, they're on two opposite paths, two opposite wavelengths for sure. That's it for season 1, episode 2. Hope to put up episode 3 sometime soon. Thank you for watching.